So before we get into today's topic, I want to pick your brain on something.
Yep.
In the first hour on our training stories, we had a story about this girl. She got married traditionally, yeah?
Uh-huh.
And then wedding is happening this Saturday, Tomboti this Saturday. And then she calls off the wedding on Thursday. But she doesn't tell her fiance or her family. She goes to the reverend who's supposed to preside over the ceremony and tells the reverend, I need this marriage. Nah, it's not happening. And then she ran away with somebody else.
Wow. Okay. For me, Eve, I think Zitori Bozagaita. I mean, I'm just wanting to be controversial, yes. But it's better because if she's going to impress everyone on that day, the wedding, and then go on to have a terrible lifetime marriage, then that's wrong. So I think she did good. She did good. Haudi kuti munhu angochata newe for the sake ngoti boss takatotenga kudhara makeke majava aripo akatorukwa kudhara, and then people proceed to marry and all that. Iwo kunyatsoziva kuti panapa this is not supposed to happen. So I'm happy that she booked out at the right time before committing to the other level of marriage. Remember, traditional entity. There's another step that you take after being married, getting married traditionally. You also get married spiritually, get into a covenant through a wedding, make vows. And that's a very strong commitment. So, yeah, sometimes when you see, this is not for me, I'm just doing it for people. It's better to call it quits ipapo. Usatwaita commit into that covenant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is from a pastor's point of view. Right. But I just felt like she could have talked to her partner. Because now I'm wondering the kind of heartbreak is going to go through, hearing it from the reverend.
Kokana the partner abusive naive. Wait a second. Yeah, so angatoita moves
now, I mean, considering Yangato this Saturday, then you cancel on Thursday, I'm sure things were like at peak level.
Yeah.
Right. It is a segment we call with the Love Coach, and we're with Pastor Simba Woloza, and like I said, he's a founder and programs coordinator and of Strong Bonds Marriage Africa, author of a book titled The Marriage Handbook, and a pastor at Praise City Church. So this morning, right, we're talking about the infidelity formula, and it's V plus O times WD equals R. I looked at this, I'm like, please tell me more.
Okay. Just like with most of the things that we have in life, like take food, in a recipe. You don't just end up one food before the recipe and whatever has to happen to eat before we can have it as food. So the same applies to infidelity, or what we call affairs. You don't just end up in that space. There's a build-up that happens. There are things that you do consistently, or there are things that you do consciously, before you can actually get into that space where you are in an affair. People don't just end up in a lodge. People don't just end up kubuda pa window lodge. That's a story for another day, but our prayers are with him. Yeah, but it's important for us to understand that there's a build-up that happens before an affair takes place, before one is caught in the act or whatever. There's a build-up. So as we try to affair-proof our relationships, we must understand the build-up. You can't affair-proof your marriage if you don't understand the build-up. When you understand the build-up, you know exactly the steps that lead to infidelity. So you then avoid that path, you then avoid that way, you then avoid certain things, because you know this is the formula that will end me in trouble one day. So there's this formula that we've just come up with here, V plus O times W over D equals to R. Okay. So what does the word V stands for? Maybe before we look at this, Eve, last week, just as a reminder, we looked at the reasons why people end up in affairs. So we looked at many reasons, I think over 10 or so that we looked at. The reason why people end up papo is because of ABCD. And today we're looking more on the process that then leads to an affair. the build up. And as we look at that, I want you to pick certain things that you can then work on, and that way you can affair proof your relationship. Because the whole idea is for us to affair proof our relationships. And by the way, this is very, very intentional. You've got to be very intentional. There are things that you must stop doing. There are things that you must start doing if you are going to affair proof your relationship. Those people vasati vaane affairs kana chi pasina kana tuma controversy around my affairs, it's because of certain things that they deliberately put in place to safeguard their relationships. So we must learn from that, and we must implement the same tools that they are using so that we stay within our parameters. And by the way, God says, the marriage bed must be kept pure, and marriage must be honored by all. And it says that adulterers will be judged by God. So it's something that we must take seriously. So I want you to consider the following formula so that you are aware of the dangers, the things that then lead you to infidelity. The V that I mentioned in that formula, the first letter, it stands for vulnerability. Vulnerability. Kuraguti, we end up cheating on our spouses because of certain things that are in us, or certain things that we have that then increase the chances of us getting into an affair. So we are more vulnerable to affairs because of many aspects. Many things make us vulnerable to getting into an affair. It's like insecurities. Because I've got a low self-esteem, and the moment someone identifies that as my weakness, they then pounce on me using that. And then and I'm feeling more confident and all that. Before you know it, I'm gravitating towards an affair. So it's very important for us to understand kuti pamwe pacho it's us who are vulnerable, because many times when an affair happens and it's discovered, we tend to point our finger at the next person, at the faithful partner, and we tend to blame that person. I cheated on you because you only zakati. And we forget to address what we have as insecurities, what we have as our vulnerabilities, that we must look at if we are going to affair proof our relationship. For instance, if we are in an unhappy marriage, in a toxic relationship, then we are vulnerable to affairs. The fact you are in an unhappy marriage, you are dissatisfied with your relationship, you know what, the grass is greener somewhere else. Someone else is happy and I'm not happy, so I must pursue my happiness. Therefore I must look for someone who can give me that joy, that happiness.
Ooh.
So when one is in a toxic relationship, they are actually vulnerable to relationships, to extramarital relationships. That's why it's important for us to make sure that our relationships are healthy, they are not toxic, that we are happy. And again, I will throw in the big word when it comes to marriage: intentionality. You've got to be intentional about becoming happy in your marriage. Kutogara pasi mtoronga kuti panapa totomboita sei kuti marriage inakidze, inofa kunakidza, and it's not going to happen rega, but you've got to plan for it. In your budget, your budget must actually reflect that kuti you are leaving something for your joy, for your happiness as a couple. From January to December, serious. Where are we getting that joy from? We end up looking for it somewhere else. So there's people that are in unhappy marriages. Those are vulnerable. Then there are people that have some addictions of some kind. When you're addicted to certain things, you start looking for those things that you're addicted to. And because this daytime radio, I won't go deeper with that, Eve, I'm sure you understand. But we're talking of my addictions are serious. Ano push a moon out of their matrimonial home, and they then end up getting into affairs because they've got to entertain this addiction that they have. And Pampacho, it's addiction even to alcohol. Because you know what, when you've had one too many, your judgment, as well, and you don't think about the consequences of what you're getting yourself into simply because alcohol is taking care of you at that moment. And then there's unresolved conflicts. And all that may also make you vulnerable to an affair, because a lot of my extramarital relationships anotangira pakuda kubatsirwa nomunhu asina capacity yokukubatsira, and before you know it, you are warming up to each other, and a fully fledged affair then comes out of that. Then there's also nyadzema financial pressures chaichayo kuti mari hakuna, mari iri kunetsa, and that makes people vulnerable to extramarital affair. Because munhu ari kufunga kuti oma ndikadani munhu kapanapa ndakutowana mari and ndakutowana lift every day to town or whatever. It's because of that vulnerability that has been brought about because of lack of finances. So it's important for you to take note of these and know exactly what you'll be fighting against. If you are vulnerable financially, someone will come and abuse you, someone will come and take advantage of you. Then kune ma issues ma boundaries yacho. A lot of us were in marriages, we're in relationships, but we don't have boundaries. Munatofunza chichi no boundary and is tikutaura nyaya yokuti kuva nezvaunoti izvi andiite chero ndikaita sei izvi andiite. Some of them are physical boundaries yekuti you know what, panzvimbo yandiende. Last week we were talking about places. Kuti at some, in many cases it's because of the places that you find yourself in and you end up in a relationship, in an extramarital relationship. So you need to have physical boundaries. Kuti I can't be found in that place, or I can't be in that area at this time. You need to have physical boundaries, and you know the places that you must avoid. Don't wait for anyone to tell you could avoid such a place. You know the place. You're kundikana. Then you also have emotional boundaries, child. Yeah. You know you know the people to speak to and the people not to speak to, and you know how to react. You know how to control your emotions. Because when we then let the feelings and the emotions be in charge of us, and then they will lead us into a place my feelings and our head has remained behind.
So in other words, you're saying self-introspect and then find those places that what do you call it? Those spaces in you that you need to work on.
Exactly.
And certain things you need to avoid.
Exactly. Be intentional. In terms of even protecting your ear gate, your eye gate, what you see, what you hear. It's very important. Protect your heart. There's what we call the heart gate. Protect your heart. Don't just let in people from all over just come into your heart and all that. Protect yourself. Watch out for those areas. And so if you don't do that, you make yourself vulnerable to affairs. Then there's the issue of keeping secrets, from your spouse, nechichi and all that. It also makes you vulnerable to affairs. If you have issues, the marriage that we talk about is premised on the principle of openness. Talk to your person. You mustn't have anything in your cupboards, any skeletons in your cupboards. And when you do that, you reduce the chances of you then emptying out that on someone else and trying to get sympathy from someone else. Get help from your spouse. Then there's also people that have lots of idle time. Kungova netime yakawanda, so yokuti unozopesera ngoti okay, with this time that I have, I might as well look for someone umbotamba naye.
So find hobbies.
Yes, busy is good, hey. Busy is good. Get busy, because if you're idle, like they say, with an idle mind is a workshop for the devil.
You start cooking up weird things in your head. Right. So if you're just joining us, it is the Love Coach, and I'm with Pastor Simba Woloza here. And we're talking about the infidelity formula. So yeah, you can fire away on WhatsApp if you've got any questions about what we're talking about. That's on 0772162651. We are Star FM, sounding good all the time. Right. So with only about 5 minutes to go, we're with the Love Coach, Pastor Simba Woloza. We're talking about the infidelity formula. Our time is being jealous, but please.
Okay, so we're still on the letter V, the first one, which you said stands for vulnerability. And one of the things that also make you vulnerable to affairs is generational. Besides, we spoke about time and idle time, but now it's really generational. When you take stock of your family, where you're coming from, when you thought, you know what, everyone would have an affair and all that. When you come from such a setup, when you're coming from such a family, you also need to make sure that you deal with whatever generational issues or generational cases that might be following in that bloodline. So you need to be true to yourself. Of course, people are born with that sinful nature, and that's where we need a rebirth. That's where you need to really commit your life to God and say, God, I know I'm coming from this sinful nature and I need to have a relationship with you. Make me a new man. It's very important so that you are not vulnerable to some of these things that keep on coming to you and you don't even understand. It could be something that is generational. So let's move on to the next letter. So if you have all these vulnerabilities and then you add the next one, O, which is opportunities. You then make that possible now because you are now presented before you. Name opportunities. Actually, you are coming from this place where you are vulnerable, you have issues, you have insecurities and all that, and now opportunities are now there. Like social media, now with social media, internet in general, that actually comes with lots of opportunities for people to cheat. That's why my cyber affairs are actually more popular than physical affairs or whatever forms of affair. People are actually having cyber affairs. Kutopusha zvefafeza vachidana napafoni vasatatombonana. And then you also have workplaces. We spoke at some point in time, we spoke about work spouses. Kuti kumabasa ekoko kune vatu vane work spouses. Vatu vane madzimai ekubasa chete kana varume ekubasa chete vasingazikanwe. Kumba kune umwe. Then you also have work trips. They also come across as opportunities as well. Patenda kumabasa kuya. And when you are fair, you prove your relationship. Make sure pamuru travel. The traveling arrangements are in such a way we don't promote workplace affairs. Then there is also the church cannot be left out there. I'm a pastor, yes, but I don't want to say the church is also clean there. Because a lot of affairs are also happening within the church.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of principles rooted there and all that. Then there is also, of course, I go to the gym, our health clubs, our gyms. Those are also potential places for people to actually get into affairs. If you get in there and you don't have principles, it's a problem. So add vulnerabilities and opportunities and multiply that, number 3, with a wrong decision. That's the W over D. A wrong decision. By the way, listeners, cheating is not a mistake. It is a decision. It's a bad decision that you have made. Don't try to justify it. And did you mistake? It's not a mistake. Own up. You know what? I made a bad move. I made a bad decision. Remember, one bad decision it can actually destroy an entire future your family. So it's very important for you to make sure that you don't make a wrong decision. So that was an excuse you could answer. It was a mistake. It's not a mistake. You've been planning it. It's a process. It's not an event. When people end up in an affair, it's not that it's an event. It's a process that was happening over time. Only that you didn't notice, could you actually participating in that infidelity formula. So when it comes to wrong decisions, we decide to flirt. It's not like someone has a gun on your head and says, don't, rather flirt with me now. No, you decide on your own. We touch that hug. You fantasize, you take off your wedding ring, ring, before you know it, someone thinks you are not taken, and you are making yourself available. You've made the wrong decision. Being with someone that you're attracted to, the eye contact that we make and all that, particularly what we call the second look. Seeing someone is okay for with just one look, but for the second look, sharing too much information and dressing, in your Torah Maria, you know what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of things. I think next week we'll touch on a case study. We want to look at a biblical story that happened and look at this formula even more. But otherwise for today, I wanted you to understand that formula. And of course, the equal or the sum of all this is regret. That's what the R stands for, regret.